Hey, Amandeep, how you doing?
Hi, good, thanks. How's it going, Sina?
Yeah, good. Full disclosure to the audience, we recorded a little bit before, but the mic just I don't know, just froze on us. So this is take two, but we only recorded for like a minute, so it's all good. But what I was saying was, I mean, this is like fresh for the audience, but I'm really excited to have you on because, like, obviously we're going to talk about Medium and writing and blogging and all of that stuff. Full disclosure, I've started blogging for those who don't know. Made like a fair few, like quite a bit of money as well from it within the past 3 months. I've only started 3 months ago, and what's really surprised me is the whole passive nature of it, which is really cool because that's what I was really searching for. So an article I wrote like say 2 months ago is still making me money now, which is like pretty amazing. So that's why I love it as well as like sharing opinions
Mm.
and lessons to people. Like the comments I get are really nice. So that's why it's so cool for me to have you on because I can actually directly relate to you. Whereas like I have people on the podcast before where they talk about drinks products and I can obviously relate around the business side, but obviously
Yeah,
I've never launched a drinks product myself.
yeah,
So yeah, massively thankful for you to come on and I can't wait to speak to you basically.
yeah. Thanks, that Sina. Likewise.
Why don't you kind of take two with just telling, I guess, what is it that you do on Medium? How did you get started on Medium? How long you been going for? All of that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I started reading on Medium initially in mid 2019, and it was just kind of from random internet browsing, and then I ended up getting a membership, and I was reading on there for about 6 months, with no intention of ever really writing. And then I kind of saw a few stories about how to get started as a writer, and it was around the end of the year, so I was like, oh, this could be a cool New Year's resolution, and I can do something productive. But I never actually thought it would go anywhere. So I made my account, I started writing, and I went viral almost straight away, which
Really?
is quite like it's not something which is very common. And because I did that, then I was like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously now. And after that, so that was January 2020, and now we're in April 2021, and I've gained like over 30,000 followers. I've become the editor of a big publication, the Entrepreneur's Handbook, which publishes people like Sina and like entrepreneurs from all over the world. But one of the big things about the Entrepreneur's Handbook is it's not just for people who've made it; it's about all the people who are aspiring and how to go about it because it's so overwhelming sometimes with all this
Mm,
information, and you want to become an entrepreneur, but you don't know how to. So it's kind of trying to help people like your audience and how they're going to go along that path. My
mm,
own writing is a mix of between mindfulness and self improvement and entrepreneurship. So how can you have these goals and these lofty ambitions, but at the same time just not burn out and put yourself to the ground? Because I've been there before, and I'm sure a lot of other people have as well, where they're trying so hard to get something and then they realize, does it
mm.
even really matter? And it's kind of the millennial crisis in a way.
Yeah, I mean that's something that we've talked about a lot on the podcast, actually, really interestingly.
Mm.
So I think like we could talk about that for ages, but I know blogging is something that it's such an interesting concept to a lot of young people because you know a lot of like obviously like people are looking for passive ways to make money but also like make content basically in different ways, and
Yeah,
this is something that obviously blogging's been around for ages, but
yeah,
I don't really think there's been like one platform that's kind of won in the space, and now there's Medium, which is a really cool
mm,
platform. Obviously others exist, um but
mm,
that's why I'd love to have you on because like loads of young people obviously see blogging as a very cool thing, but a lot of them don't really know how to get started, I suppose, because I don't know, it seems a bit
yeah,
daunting in a lot of ways. So I guess your own story started from just reading different blogs and kind of seeing what you liked, and
mm,
then but how did you kind of like find the confidence and also find your own voice? I think that's such a an
yeah,
important thing, right?
yeah, yeah. It really is because there is so much content online already, but there's still only one you. Like
Mm,
nobody in the world is exactly like you. They haven't got the same experiences, your background. So if you're leaning into that, and if you can make yourself sound like you and have bring in these stories that you've got that other people don't have, that are relatable, that people can it's not quite the same in their life, but it's something
Mm.
which they can be like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see I'm like this person. That's what makes a difference, because if you're just going to be pure information, you're competing against everybody else.
Mm.
If you're writing in a voice or in a way that people can connect with you, it doesn't matter about the competition as much. And it's the same thing on YouTube, any other platform like
Yeah.
this. It's you've got to be different in some way, and the only way to do that is to really show your personality and really make it
Mm.
sound like you.
Yeah.
And a good tip for doing this is I always get somebody who actually knows me in real life to read my stories, because they can kind of be that sense check of this sounds like you, or like I couldn't tell that you wrote this. And I think
Mm.
it comes back to a point you mentioned about people are kind of scared to do that. And because they're scared to do that, it comes out generic and just like a bit devoid of their personality.
Mm.
So it's protecting yourself, but it's also stopping yourself from succeeding.
Mm. But I mean, the possibilities are kind of like limitless, because
Yeah.
like obviously like I've written about, and I write about entrepreneurship, and I've written a little bit
Mm.
about mindset and happiness, but
Mm.
and like yourself, you write about similar topics, but you can really write about so many different topics. Like when I went
Yeah.
on Medium for the first time, it's kind of like I didn't realize that the community was so strong.
Yeah. It really
You can
is.
write about so many different, yeah, it's crazy strong.
Yeah.
I'd even say it's probably stronger than the podcasting community, I'd say.
Mm.
So you can write about things like relationships. You can talk about stuff like, I don't
Mm.
know, uh, nightlife. I don't really know. You can literally
Mm.
talk cooking.
Yeah.
You can literally talk about anything. So whatever your kind of interest is, and this goes for a lot of different content
Mm.
creation, you can really find your niche. You don't need to worry about
Yeah.
like being too broad. You will find an audience. Medium is literally worldwide. So you don't
Yeah.
have to worry about like finding an audience, because you don't have to worry about like, I guess, broadening your horizons to find an audience, because
Mm.
even though you go
Yeah.
niche, you'll still have people that want to read
Mm.
it.
And I think there's an availability bias that happens where if you read a lot about a certain subject, then you think that's all there is on Medium, whereas you're seeing a tiny kind of small part of it. And it's just because you're not searching for other content, and then the algorithm's not feeding you that content. And it's like, oh, there's no articles about this. Whereas I've got like a friend who had an article that was about cats, and that went viral. And nobody ever think, oh, I'm going to write about cats, and that's going to be something that
Yeah.
will go big on Medium. So
Mm.
it is a case of you can really, if your stories are unique and your stories show off you, there'll be an audience for that.
Yeah, for
Obviously, the
sure.
more and more niche you go, you're closing yourself off in some ways. But if you're too broad and too generic, then everybody's read it
Mm.
before.
Let's go back to your first article. This is what I'm really interested, or like your first few months on
Mm.
Medium.
Yeah.
How did you kind of like when you talk about your I'm really interested in the story behind this. Like
Mm.
when you talk about your articles going, or your first one going viral,
Mm.
what was that experience like? What do you mean by viral? Like how
Yeah.
many views or whatever does that mean?
Yeah.
And like how did that experience, how, like what did you feel, I guess? Like how did that whole experience plan out?
So, yeah, it's like, when I can't think of an example. So it was, I expected to post on there, and I knew the stats on Medium, like 95% of people don't make $100 a month. So I was fully expected for it to be read by 100 people, if that. So that was my kind of expectations. And it's been read by now over 100,000 people,
Wow.
which for my first article, it completely blew my expectations out of the water. So it's like, let's say you're going to play like football, and you're expecting to just play against five-a-side guys, and then Ronaldo turns up. It's kind of like that. It just
Mm.
came out of nowhere. I didn't expect it at all. So what that kind of initially leads to is my distorted sense of how easy Medium was. And then I thought, oh my God, like if I can go viral first story, I'm going to do this every time. It didn't work out like that. I've got better,
Yeah.
and now I'm able to, like, more of my stories are doing well because I've got improved over time. But there's always that element of luck at the beginning, I think. And my first article that went viral was about Japanese mindsets. And that came from like my trips to Japan and like my karate background. So there's very few people who could have written that article.
Mm.
And I think that's what really stood out, is that a lot of people want to learn about this stuff, but there's few people who both have my background and are also wanting to write.
Mm.
And that's what I think worked for it.
Yeah.
But what actually happened is that it meant that I kept checking my stats every half an hour, like, oh, I've got another 10 views, oh, another 10 views, oh, another 100 views, which isn't healthy. And I've gone
No.
away from that since. But you do get this massive sense of dopamine when that first viral article hits.
Yeah, it's quite negative, and it's not just for you as a Medium writer, it's for
Yeah.
literally any content creator. Like I
Yeah.
used to do that back in the day, literally scrolling up, refresh. It's
Yeah.
really negative. Now I literally don't really hardly check the
Yeah.
stats. It's quite good. But so that was that literally your first article? It went that, or was it
It
like
was
one
my
of your
second.
first? Your
My
second one?
first one got
Wow.
deleted afterwards because I wrote it and it wasn't very good, but I kind of set myself a deadline of I wanted to get something out at the beginning of the year.
Mm.
And then it wasn't very good, but I was like, I'm just going to publish. And then I've done one article and it's done. Because, like you said, there's so much fear about that very first article. And what's the worst that could happen? Either you get no
Yeah.
views and then nobody's seen it, so it doesn't matter if it was good
Yeah.
or bad, or it goes viral and then you've got a load of followers and then you've got a lot of money and it's worth it. So there's no bad scenario there, right? Like, nothing can really go wrong. Unless you're writing about something really controversial. You're writing about, like, you're trying to espouse views that are racist or sexist or something like that, then something could go wrong. But if you're just talking
Yeah.
about normal everyday life stuff, it's okay. Like, nothing's going to happen to you.
Yeah. You said something really interesting a bit earlier. You talked about how 95% of people don't make less than $100 a month on Medium. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And I guess people listening to that would be like, hang on, like $100 a month, $100 a month extra every month doesn't sound that bad, especially when it's like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing any extra work for it. But it's quite interesting that you said
Mhm.
that. But I guess, like, how do you kind of break that mold? How do you kind of
Mhm.
go beyond that? Are there any like secrets or trades like the I guess aren't really advertised?
Yeah. So I think one of the initial things about the 95% of people who don't make $100, there's some of those people who are really good writers. They just haven't quite worked out how to connect with the audience. And then there's some people who are writing, but they're writing it more as a journal. They're not thinking about the audience. And that's a really crucial thing, is that if you want to write for your own thoughts and for your own sanity, don't publish it. Like, you don't need to publish it. If you're trying to make money from it, then you've got to think about what value is adding to somebody else. Why should somebody else read this? And I think that's the missing bit that a lot of people just don't quite understand, is that if you've got lessons you want to teach, you've also got to think about how these lessons are going to be taken by the person reading. Because if you can't explain them in a way that they can understand, it doesn't matter how good you think they are. So that's a really crucial thing, which I think so many people forget, is views are about other people valuing it, not what your value is on it. And some people get quite hurt by that because they think it's so important to them, but they're not trying to get inside their readers' heads. In terms of how you get from 100 to higher than that, one thing is building a name. So most people don't get lucky like I did, where I had that massively viral article early on. For most people, it's you're consistently doing quality, and that gets you noticed. And by getting noticed in that way, you start opening up doors. So on Medium, there's these things called publications, and the publications give you a gateway to a larger audience. So, like, Seen is pretty new on Medium, but if you publish Entrepreneur's Handbook, we've got 200,000 followers, and some of those will then see his work, and it expands where he can reach. So there's that side of things. And the other really important thing on Medium is something called curation. And this is where people who work for Medium will read every article and decide whether or not to push it out to people who follow those topics. And you've got to be getting created every article. There's no, like, pretty much no excuse for not doing that. it's a minimum standard. Lots of articles get curated and don't resonate with an audience. So you've got these kind of twin peaks here, right? Curation is
Mm.
about the quality in terms of formatting, in terms of the headline not being clickbait. But then the other side, you can have this and make no money. But you also need to have the other thing, which is the audience. Will the audience read the headline and understand what value they're going to get from it? And it doesn't need
Mm.
to be that it's going to change their life. You don't need to transform somebody's life every article. I don't know about you, but I don't think I've read a single article that's transformed my life, no matter how many articles claim it. It's
No, no, of course not.
it's can I entertain the reader? Can I,
Yeah.
if it's an article about love, can I make them feel a little bit happier? Can I make them smile? If it's a
Mm.
humorous article, can I make them laugh? If it's an article about entrepreneurship, can I give them one lesson that helps them in their journey and makes them
Yeah.
more curious? It doesn't need to. I think this is one of the things that stops people from carrying on or from publishing, is that they think it needs to break the world or like be
Yeah.
this new idea that's crazy, and it doesn't. It's a little bit
Provide a
more
bit of
organic,
value.
which just gives somebody their 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes
Mm.
value of time. They enjoyed reading it, they enjoyed listening to your voice in their heads, and
Mm.
that's all you're doing.
Yeah. I think the key thing, so there's a few key things I want to pick out from your answer there. It was so beautifully articulated, by the way. It was about, so firstly, the whole perception shift of, I guess, journaling to more value-based writing,
Yeah.
which is, crazy important. It's not something that I guess is on the forefront of people's minds because,
Mm.
but like without you even knowing it, you're kind of writing for yourself rather than writing for other people.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting you said that. And then secondly, I think it was the publication stuff. So yeah, just for a bit of context for the audience, I've I've written on Medium quite a few times. I think I've got like maybe 15 like blogs now. Not like
Mm.
tons, obviously, but like 15 or 20. And the ones that I've not published in publications, maybe got like, I don't know, 50 views, something like that.
Mm.
My most viewed one is in the Entrepreneur's Handbook, is
Mm.
one of the big publications that you
Yeah.
control. You're an editor of. That one got like, it's almost 700 views now, so it's pretty
Mm.
substantial, the difference. And
Yeah.
obviously, once you start getting in those sort of publications, then you as a person get noticed as well, and so
Yeah.
people start following you from that. So obviously, those articles
Mm.
before that you published that only got 10 views or whatever, if you post more, posts similar to that 10 view one, that will now get 30 views or 40 views or even more. So
Yeah.
obviously the growth is slow. I didn't go viral like you did,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But again, like those are the lessons that I learned. And
Mm.
what's really cool for me is that, the third thing was around like curation and stuff like that. And again, I've experienced a similar thing where I've been curated by
Mm.
Medium quite unexpectedly. I was like, I don't really know what's going on here. I
Yeah.
just got an email, and but I didn't see any views increase or decrease. But then I've had
Yeah.
ones where I got curated and the views been like pretty high. So it's kind of like,
Mm.
I don't know. You have to get lucky to get curated, but then you also have to be lucky for it
Yeah.
to lead to more views. So,
Yeah.
but
I'd say
yeah,
getting curated is just like having a lottery ticket. Like,
mm,
if you don't have the lottery tickets, you're pretty much not going to win. It's very difficult to make a lot of money on an article that hasn't been curated. But getting
yeah,
curated, all it means is you're in the game. You could potentially go viral, and that's all it is.
exactly. Mm. So those articles that I obviously got published in Entrepreneur's Handbook, and a lot of
Mm.
people viewed them, they're obviously the ones that have made me the most money
Mm.
from, and they still continue to make me money. Like the one that I published in
Mm.
February is still making me money now, which is,
Yeah.
I've never actually experienced passive income like this before, which is really
Yeah.
cool. Obviously, there's other passive income streams, but
Mm.
this is one that I really enjoy because it's like more, it's creative. So
Yeah.
I guess, is that an element of Medium that you really enjoy also, and is that something that I think a lot of people must be drawn to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Like, it's one of those things where I started with such pure intentions in a way, and then once I went viral and once the money started coming in, it does shift your perception. Whereas now it's gone from, oh, this is a fun little side hobby, to this could actually be a good earner. This could be a passive income source. And it's like you said, like some of the big articles I've had where they've been earning like hundreds from like every month for like 6 months. It's like, wow, I've made it. And it doesn't quite work like that. Like you've got to keep creating new content to maintain the same kind of level of income. And that's kind of one thing I'm working at the moment, is how to have like no bad months in a way. So I don't want to have it so boom and bust. And I'm getting better at that now. So I've got a pretty good range. It's like I know I'm going to get at least a few thousand every month. And to me, that makes a big difference. And the big thing about that is, like I said, is collecting these stories, which each of them are doing a little bit a month. But some of my older articles now have zero. And it's really frustrating. But that's the way the world goes, right? But with curation, at any point, they might start pushing, the algorithm might start pushing that story again. And I know there's stories of people who had like an article which made $50 in the first year, and then all of a sudden it went viral and made $5,000.
Wow.
So that's one of the exciting things, is that these articles you have now, you never know if they could go viral in the future. So you could have given up a medium, you might have never look at it again. You just look at your bank account. Wait, what? Where did this like $5,000 come from? And it's that story you wrote a year ago or 2 years ago. I find that quite exciting.
Yeah, that is crazy exciting. And I think what's quite exciting for me is that you kind of like, once you build up that library of, you've got like you got a backlog of a lot of different articles, and what you just talked about is that you have kind of like that baseline of $1,000 to $2,000 like dollars or pounds, I don't know what you denominated it in, but that's pretty much secured every month for you now, right? Like that's the level that I guess a lot of people want to get to. So is that something that you've worked towards, that you've kind of actively pursued, or is that something that's kind of arisen just from publishing a lot of content?
I think it's one of those difficult things where there's not necessarily something I could have done to make that happen. All you can really control is the quality and what you're doing. And by focusing on that, that makes the numbers go up. So having less of those articles which are duds. And it's weird how your perception changes over time. So for me now, anything that gets less than 1,000 articles, 1,000 views in the first week is a dud. And if I started and you told me that, I'd tell myself to shut up because I just appreciate the views. But it really changes as you go along. And I kind of always try and make sure that I keep this gratefulness that somehow all of these thousands of people care what I have to say. And it might be millions, could be hundreds of thousands some month, and it could be closer to 100,000 in other months. But isn't that pretty crazy? And it's got to always keep that in mind, is that even if when you started, you said you got 50 views on an article, isn't that pretty crazy that 50 people read your article and cared, and you might have made their day in some way? So it's really keeping that kind of sense of amazement, I think, and it stops you from really getting kind of bogged down in, is it like this 1,000 or that 1,000? So I think generally, like for me, it's at least $3,000 or so per month, but usually it's better than that. But what I'm trying to maintain is like, how do I stop it from going beneath that? Because that makes you just feel a bit more stable, that you know it's doing pretty well. But for some people, there are low boundaries. If, say, some of the top guys, like if it goes under 20,000, it's the end of the world. It's like, it is definitely not the end of the world to be earning less than $20,000 a month. But it's trying to keep your head screwed on throughout all of this side as well.
These numbers are pretty crazy to me. Obviously, I've just started, but I mean, I think they would even be like more crazy for the people listening, that you can make this level of money just from writing, from doing literally writing about your passions, which is it seems like pretty much the dream, right? And not only that, you can build up, like, obviously with that backlog, and it can kind of be more secure than, I guess, some months you make a couple thousand and then the next month you make like zero. It's actually more secure than that from what you've experienced. Like for me, it's not that secure yet. Like I have, like, obviously it's grown every month now, but I've obviously like some months it's been really low, some months it's been a lot higher. So I guess, would you say like when you have
everywhere?
Do you really?
Yeah, it fluctuates a lot, but it's that kind of my bad months are now what my good months used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm trying to like, it's kind of shifting the whole thing across rather than having like a month which is 10,000, then a month is 500. I want to have it in a smaller range. So even if I don't have the massive peaks that you might have, it's nice to just know that you've got at least a few thousand coming in. It gives you that stability, but it's tough because the outcome can change and then I could lose that stability. But that's what I'm trying to build up, is having enough good articles where luck will eventually favor me that one of those will do well.
Mm. Well, let's move on to, I guess, the actual writing element of it, because that's obviously that's so instrumental. Like we've talked about obviously topics, like we talked a little bit about tips of how to get sort of like, I guess, more general things of how to grow your Medium following or whatever. But as for actually writing an article, say you have value that you want to deliver to people, like value, obviously more than journaling. How do you kind of like best play towards the Medium algorithm, or like, what are some tricks that you've learned that kind of, something that I've really learned from you is that the image is actually a lot more important than people think. That's something that I've picked up just from looking. But I guess from you actually going through the experience, what are some things that you've picked up? I'm really interested, like personally.
I think one of the big things is people click on the headline and the image. So it doesn't matter how good your content is if your headline doesn't attract them. And on a place like Medium, there's so much clickbait that people are turned off by that. So it's, how can you show the value in the headline without being too overbearing? And if you've got a headline, you need to make sure that you answer that headline. Because if you want to gain followers, if I read somebody's article, and I've done this to people in the past, I've read their article, and I said that they didn't answer their headline. And that means that next time I see them, I'm not going to click on them again, because I know last time I had a bait and switch. So that's something that's really important. And the next most important part is the introduction. It doesn't matter how much value you're giving your readers. If they're bored in the introduction, that's it, game over. They press the back button, they remember your name as the person who bored them, and they might not click on you again. So you've got to be really careful about that. And with the introductions, and you do get more leeway when you get more of an audience, right? So with me, and when you're in a large publication, because you're using the publication reputation, I'm using my reputation, where people know in the past that they've enjoyed my stuff. So even if the introduction might not be as good as they might expect, I've got that leeway. But that takes time to build up, and you can't rely on that at the beginning. So you've really got to focus on the introduction, and how can you get across of why this is worth their time? Why should they not just press back and click on the other hundreds of articles? And there's different ways to do this. One of the worst ways is to use a statistic that everybody already knows. So on Entrepreneur's Handbook, a classic one is 90% of startups fail in the first 5 years. And do you know how many times I've read that? So that's not going to make me continue reading. I'm already bored because I've seen that stat so many times and everybody uses it. How can you do that differently? How can you have an anecdote or a story or a stat that we haven't seen? How can you do that in a way which is like, oh, this is interesting, to keep them reading? Because that introduction is, how do I make them read the rest of the story? That's all it is. Because if and I think a great way to think about this as well is look at your own reading. When you're reading things and you're clicking on articles, what do you do? Do you tend to read articles properly, or do you tend to kind of scan them and see if there's anything interesting? So don't expect that your readers will act in a way that's so alien to you.
Yeah.
Treat them like people. Treat them like you'd be, right? So would you carry on reading your article?
Really good advice. Yeah, really good advice. I think like it's really cool having you on the podcast because, like, not only people can see this as like a really viable way to, I guess, make a living or make like a supplementary income from doing literally what they love, like writing. but obviously, like, yeah, the tips that you provided are really cool. Uh, but as for actual, like, I guess, what if people kind of don't really know what to write about? I guess that must be a really common question, is that
Yeah.
obviously I know I'm passionate about certain things, but I don't know what to write about, and will people actually listen to me?
Yeah. And I get, will people actually listen to me? That's what I didn't think anybody would listen to me. And they did. So I'm proof that it can work. Uh,
Yeah.
so if you're worried about people not taking you seriously, it seemed to work for me. And it's really leaning into like, where are your experiences in life that other people could benefit from? Um, and if you do that, then people will listen because you don't like most people aren't billionaires, right? They're not like that. So you can relate to them in a much more human level than somebody who's crazy successful and like has been living on a yacht their entire life. They can't write in a way that can appeal to the average person.
Mm.
So the more human you are, and you've been able to overcome your faults and the different things that have held you back, that's a struggle that everybody's going through. People don't want a perfect person to read because they're not perfect themselves. They can't relate to that.
Yeah.
There's another part of your question which I forgot.
Well, I've actually forgotten it as well, to be fair. Well, it's okay. I had another question around, I guess, like, just to wrap up the podcast. And Amadip,
Yeah.
it's been so good having you on the podcast. And this is a question that I've pondered a lot in my experience of both podcasting on Instagram and also on Medium. The age-old question of consistency versus quality. Like, sorry, I've just messed that up. Quality over quantity.
Yeah.
Which factors, like, which one of the two do you value the most? And I know your answer will probably be both, but like, yeah, I'm interested to see your thought
Yeah.
process with that one.
So I'm actually the anomaly on Medium. So this month I've published 4 articles, and I generally do like 1 or 2 articles a week, and some weeks I won't publish at all. So I'm really proof of this idea that you can make it big or medium without publishing every single day, which is what a lot of other people say.
Mm,
So I publish around 100 articles in a year and a half, whereas other people have published that in a month. But
yeah.
it doesn't matter in a way that you can do both ways and be successful. But if you're playing the quantity game, where does that take you? Because if you keep going down that line, who you're attracting in the bigger scheme of things, right? Like if you're going for the quality, which is what I go for, then that can lead to a conversation like this. It can lead to other things where people will respect that more and they'll trust me. Whereas if you just write like a million articles and hope one of them does well, then that's not the kind of person that people resonate with. People
Mm,
don't want to get you or have a chat with you because they don't know if you're going to be that one good article. There's 50 ones that had like 100 typos in them. So really think about like, who would you want to connect with? Would you want to connect with the person who's writing quality or the person who's just churning stuff out? And obviously, the best possible thing is to have both, but that's not
yeah.
possible for most people. Like
Mm,
I've been doing on the side for all this time, and it's like I couldn't do that. I couldn't write a good quality article every single day. Like my most recent article I published yesterday, that was hard. Like I've been, I've got over a few million views now. I've got 30,000 followers. It was hard. It took me ages. I had the ideas and I couldn't quite work out how I'm going to structure it. And that's happening to me now.
mm,
But my final product is much stronger because of it, because I haven't just like, screw it, I'm going to publish it anyway.
mm,
And at the beginning, you do need a little bit of like being perfectionist and not putting too much pressure on yourself because you're not good out. But keep questioning yourself, keep looking at it, like, is this something I'm proud to have my name on? And if it's
mm.
not, then why are you putting it out into the public? If
Yeah.
you're embarrassed for somebody to read your article because you think that you haven't put your best work into it, then you shouldn't be publishing it.
Mm,
And it's absolutely fine if you're learning, right? Like if it's the best you can do, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
But
That is a wonderful message.
Thing. Just do the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say that's a wonderful message to end on, and there you have it, guys. It's all about quality with Medium. Amardeep is proof of that. Amardeep, it's been so good having you on the podcast. As I've said like probably 3 or 4 times now. But yeah, genuinely it has. Like, genuinely it has. I'm sure people will want to check out your writing after this. Be like, what's this guy on about? Like, is he any good?
Yeah.
So how can people stay in touch with you and stay in touch with your writing and also all the new stuff that you're doing after they finish the podcast?
Yeah. So the main place to find all my writing is like my name, so amardeep.medium.com. But I've also got a website which is my full name, which is amardeepspalmer.com. And one of the annoying things is people don't realize there's a million Amardeeps in this world. And there's a million or so Palmers as well. So it's quite difficult to get a good domain name. So on there, it's got links to all of my articles, which are free. And you can also find my Medium course as well. So that if this kind of resonated with you, you've had a bit of a checkout of Medium and you think, like, how can I follow the path I've done? You can check out that there as well. And I can give Sinner a special like discount code for his audience as well. Those are the main places at the moment, but I've also got my Instagram, which again is my full name, so amardeep.s.palmer, and it's the same on Twitter as well. So you can find me wherever. Sweet. And if you find me on one of those places, you'll get the links to the other places anyway.
Nice one.
So also, Sina, for having me. It's been having a talk with you. And
no, yeah, my pleasure. And also, while you're on Medium, everyone, follow me as well. I'm also on there. I'm recent. I know you guys probably know that already. But I also write about entrepreneurship, podcasting. I know a lot of people that listen to this are also interested in publishing their own podcasts. So I post about that as well. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast again, Amardeep. And I'm sure we'll catch up soon. Thank you so much.
There you go.